Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is Logan Fields, the author of the new book from Huntington Press entitled 2020 Sports Betting, Think Like a Pro. Logan Fields, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Well, thank you very much, guys. Long-time listener of the show, and against all odds, I find myself as a guest. So it's quite a thrill, pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Well, people who write gambling books for Huntington Press have the odds are in their favor that they're going to end up on this show for some reason.
A rite of passage.
So, how did you get into sports betting, and when did it become serious enough to quit your day job?
Okay, I was 1999. I was 34 years old, living in Tampa, Florida. About 10 years out of college, working in the insurance industry. And, fairly comfortable, not rich by any standards, but, living a bachelor life, you kind of spend what you make. So as far as a bankroll goes, not maybe a couple thousand. But I wasn't thinking in life of terms of bankrolls. I was a working stiff. So one day on the way home from work, I heard them talking on sports radio about this match play golf championship. And in golf, they modeled it after the NCAA tournament. In golf, a 64 seed beating a 1 seed is not that unusual. You look at Tiger Woods, greatest golfer of all time. His record in match play, very pedestrian. So I knew that there was value betting on underdogs because I figured that people were going to take favorites and lean towards them. And I heard on day one that 21 of the 32 matches were won by the underdogs. And I was thinking to myself, man, oh man, I would do anything. Can you imagine going 21-11 betting underdogs? It would be an unbelievable windfall. So about that time, there were advertisements on the radio about all these sports books. And it was just like, can you actually bet on sports from your computers? So that night I went home and looked around a bit. And sure enough, I found hundreds of sites. This was in the infancy of sports betting, and it was wild and woolly, to say the least. They were popping up all over. And sure enough, I found odds for day 2 of the match play, and I just couldn't believe it. That night, I sent in $1,000. I'll never forget it, by my credit card. That was the way to do it back then. The fees were outrageous because it counted as a cash advance. So I sent $1,000 into All-Star Sportsbook and started playing. And by the end of the weekend, the 1,000 that I started with turned into 2,000. Now you might not think that that's a huge deal, but for me, for a guy used to betting $50 a game on NFL Sundays, 5 or 6 games, this was the biggest sports betting weekend of my life. So to say that I was hooked, that's an understatement. So I became very intrigued about what was going on and the types of bets that were offered. So poked around some more and stumbled upon a mistake that the books were making that allowed me to grow my balance to dramatic heights in just a matter of a few short weeks. Now, I'll get into that play here. When a golf tournament, they generally will list roughly 30 players to win the tournament. You can pick Tiger Woods. Let's say he was 8-1 odds. And I note, and everyone outside the top 30, they'll group together and call them the field. So the field wager in these tournaments was 4-1. Now, I noticed a second column, which was place odds. Will your golfer finish in the top 4? And generally, that was reduced by 4 times. So Tiger Woods 8-1, he would be 2-1 to place. Sounds pretty reasonable. The field 4-1 to win, but when you put the field and deduct by 4, you're talking even money odds. And I saw extraordinary value in playing the field at even money. In other words, I'm wagering that the top 4 finishers are not going to come from that top 30 list. And I did a few very basic calculations, and as a conservative figure, I calculated that I'm going to win this bet 92% of the time for an even money wager. And then I discovered that this wager was available at multiple books. They did a lot of copycapping there, and I wanted to get down as much as I could because I knew this was an extremely good opportunity. Only problem, I was maxed out on my credit card. I had one credit card, as we all did back then, and I was maxed out at $2,000 for these cash advances. So what it amounted to was going around town to Western Union offices. You couldn't make transfers online then either. You had to physically show up, fill out a form, and send money. So I spent a lot of time over the next couple days doing this, and sure enough, it was a winner. I mean, really, really tough to lose this bet. And my bankroll exploded, and I was off from there, and that's how it went down.
So when did you quit your day job?
It roughly took, I said that I want a year's salary in the bank, and then I'm going to leave the day job. My first wager placed at the end of February, and by June I had achieved that, put my 2-week notice in, and left the day job July 8th of 99 and haven't looked back since. Since that day, my entire income has come from sports gambling. I don't do anything else. This is my job. So it took roughly 4 months for me to leave and to focus solely on sports betting.
So this was part of the golden period of online betting. So you were getting bonuses with all of your deposits too, right?
Mm-hmm. That was part of it as well. But in those early days, the amount of that I was making, finding these mistakes that we're making, the bonuses, I mean, sure, they were helpful, but they weren't a major part of the equation.
You present yourself in the book as a sharp, low-stakes sports bettor. Who do you see as the audience for this book?
I believe that the book will help recreational gamblers quite a bit. It's going to appeal to them. Are you going to pick up my book and quit your job in 4 months? That's not going to happen. I came along in a different era. Things were a lot easier. But I think I can be helpful to a lot of people that want to be smarter sports bettors. And my whole emphasis is do not focus on beating the sides and the totals. You're not going to win. I think even the sharpest of the sharp will have a hard time convincing you that they are beating the NFL week in and week out. Can you have a good season? Sure you can. Can you have 5 good seasons? I personally don't know anyone that could do that. But that's not to say that there's not value. There's numerous proposition wagers. In fact, on NFL Sunday, you can find 100 different prop plays on each game. Now, my strategy is I can quickly scan these 100 and I can identify, even if it's only 2 or 3 a game, that I perceive there to be value. And if you take the NFL board and you're finding 2 or 3 plays out of these 100, suddenly you got 40 or 50 plays with a positive EV in play. And that's significant. So that's pretty much my bread and butter. The bad news is these plays are no fun. Betting the board and betting sides and totals is fun, but if you want to make money at this, these plays are not fun. And Bob, you talk about the no safety every year during the Super Bowl. And I mean, is there a wager that is so, I mean, it could give you a heart attack. It's just no fun at all, but it's cold and calculating, and there's value there year after year. These are the kind of plays that you're going to be making. And like I said, no fun. I watched the NFL Red Zone, and basically you're betting on things not to happen in a game because the lines are skewed for things to happen. They want to invite players to invest money on things to happen. So you're hoping that things don't happen. Now, when you're watching the Red Zone, you're watching 8 games at once, and basically they're showing that things are happening, which is not good. It's not good at all. So, I mean, it's 7 hours of torture. I mean, I kid you not. And there's nothing positive is happening. And the only good way to get through this is you got to drink. And being on the Pacific time zone, games go off at 10 a.m. Not a good look for me, but it's got to be done. So anyway, after all the 7 hours of misery, you add up the numbers and like, well, wait a minute. I won 28 and lost 22. This was a profitable day. So it's really weird how that works, but that's how it goes with the NFL with me.
So when the Unlawful Internet Gaming Enforcement Act happened in 2006, that crashed a lot of things for people online. How did you end up dealing with that?
Yeah, that did. At one time I probably had 30 outs, and a few years later I was down to maybe 8 to 10. It became much more challenging. My income did go down, but there were still outs to play at. I mean, I lost Pinnacle. I lost the British markets, and it just became much more difficult, but there was still books to be played at. So that's pretty much what I did. But Pinnacle was the big one to lose. There's ways around that I understand, but I never went there. You can do all kinds of things. One of the things is to get partners and partner with you with individuals where it is legal in their jurisdictions. But I haven't gone that route yet either. I mean, that could be certainly a possibility down the road if things turn the other way and the crackdown is bigger on the online companies.
Before we get away from the NFL, you say, yes, you can identify some profitable props, but what describe the hard work that's necessary to get into it so you have the knowledge to do this?
Okay, the hard work is mostly you're going to have to buy data to do what I do. It is available. Some of it's expensive, where they're pretty much giving you the results of every play in the NFL that's occurred in the last 20 years. Now, if you analyze those prop plays, you're going to want to look at this data and work this data and figure out what are the exact odds that there's going to be a score in the first 7 minutes of a game. So that's where the grunt work comes in, and the data doesn't give you everything. I have to physically go into each game and see is the team taking the ball on the coin flip. If they win the coin toss, are they going to accept it? Because that has dramatic ramifications on props as to who's going to score first or who's going to punt first. Sadly, it seems like all teams are deferring now. So, but you never know. There are coaches that pop up occasionally that want the ball first. So it's a lot of data analysis off of Excel spreadsheets and manipulating that data and trying to come up with value.
So other than Excel, are you a computer programmer or just manipulate Excel?
I am not a computer programmer. I'm pretty much just strictly an Excel guy. I say at my age that ship may have sailed for me, but I would welcome a partnership if one came along, and I thought it could be lucrative for us, and that's certainly something I would consider down the road.
Now, in general, what personality traits would a person have to be a winning sports player?
I think that there has to be a love of math and numbers. I think if you're on the side that just really is not math oriented, you're really gonna struggle, because basically you have numbers swimming around in your head all day, and if you don't like this, it's not going to work for you. Fusteau, who wrote Conquering Risk, he reviewed the book, and he described what I do as back of the napkin calculations. I mean, it's not real complicated what I do, but I love what I do. I do have a knack for numbers, which has helped me immensely. I don't think I could have done it without it. So if you don't have that knack, I don't believe you're going to make it.
The top sports bettors that I talk to, they say that you really need to have a love of a game, and they spend all their time watching the games. Whereas like the top horse players, they couldn't tell you the name of a horse or a jockey. So do you think that's a requirement, that you actually are watching all the games and taking that stuff in?
I think it's generally depends on the type of wagers you're doing. I'm doing the cold and calculating numbers-oriented plays, where if you ask me why a play has value, I can easily explain it to you, and I think you would buy into it. I'm not big on the player props, because I don't want to spend so many hours each week following the NFL and what player is going to play and who's the third receiver and what guy is going to get more snaps. I think if I was desperate and other things dried up, I could certainly do that. But, your time only goes so far. So there are, I would say, a large percentage of bettors that are doing exactly what you mentioned. They're following the teams and they're finding value based on what they know as far as the personnel goes. It's just not a route that I go in.
So it sounds like you could do what you do without ever watching a football game.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I still enjoy football, the NFL and golf, but the other sports I don't watch. Occasionally I will play just based on what I have numbers wise. But yeah, it's definitely possible. I watch it because I enjoy it. It's not really helping me in my wagering.
Well, that's actually really encouraging. I've always said I don't bet sports because I don't really enjoy watching it. But so, do you bet basketball at all? Because it sounds like you don't watch basketball at all.
I don't watch basketball and I don't bet it. That's probably the reason. I'm just not that interested in it. I did early in my career, and I outlined in the book some major mistakes I was making by betting large sums of money on halftime wagers and not watching the games, as you pointed out, and you can't do that. So I found out the hard way that this was not going to work. So I pretty much narrowed down to golf, football, and baseball. That's pretty much the only three sports, with an occasional foray into tennis, but that's about it.
So
you mentioned in the book, though, that you think that the real opportunities are in the markets where not everybody is there, the smaller markets.
Exactly. Like I said, most bettors are focusing on professional bettors. They like to do sides and totals. They find edges. I mean, I think it's very difficult. Maybe not from the NFL so much, but I think it's a bit easier in college where you can find some value. But I'm focusing, most of my bets throughout my career are on wagers of less than 500 and often much less than 500. It was described as a carpet bombing approach, where I'm making tons and tons of smaller wager amounts that the bigger players are ignoring, and it adds up. It adds up when you're making hundreds of plays versus just a select few. And Saturdays and Sundays are busy for me, and I'm finding value. And it's a tough process, but you put the time into it and you're going to make money provided you're accurate. And I don't have to be accurate all the time. I might be making dumb plays that I'm just not factoring in something that I should be. But if I'm right more than I'm wrong, then the results will be good.
How is betting baseball different from betting football?
Baseball has, you talk about a database, you can get a massive database. There's 10 times the amount of baseball games than football games. So I can pinpoint within a penny or two what an actual line should be for a given proposition wager. Once again, I would steer all aspiring gamblers not to focus on the sides and totals. There's plenty of props in baseball that you can win from. You do need to buy data. The data is available. And I'll give you one example of a prop that I do discuss in the book as well. And that's been around forever. Will there be a run scored in the first inning? Now, I can tell you with my database that if you have a total in a game of 7.5 or 8 runs are expected to be scored, the odds of a run scoring in the first inning is very close to even money. Let's just call it even money. So there's an even money. Will there be a run scored? Will there not be? Now, I have noticed that when you have some studs on the mound, let's talk about Clayton Kershaw, when he's pitching, the public perception is that there is not going to be a run scored in the first inning because these pitchers will mow them down, and this is going to be easy money. All I need is a couple goose eggs. But they overbet it. That drives up the yes prices. Now, just a couple weeks ago, World Series Game 1, I took my dog to the vet and got out. It was 5 p.m. and first pitch was 8:07, and I was driving home, Alfie by my side, who was no help, incidentally. I found a line for the yes, should be even money at plus 120. This is 5:01, 6 minutes before the first pitch. That's a lot of value. Plus 120 for an even money wager. I hit it. The next light, it's 5:03 p.m. As soon as I hit it, the value, they change the value. It goes down to even money again. There's no value. 2 minutes later, it jumps up again. I'm hitting it for plus 118. And then 2 minutes later again, right before first pitch, hitting it for plus 120 again. So these are the kind of plays, there's no doubt about it. There's value. I mean, you can overthink it and say, oh, well, it's even money, but Kershaw's on the mound. I mean, he hasn't allowed a run in 13 straight. I mean, I think that's overanalyzing. I want to look at the thousands and thousands of similar games paid in the last 20 years, and that's the number I'm going off of. And baseball is so precise because the database is so big that if I'm within 3 cents of where I think the number should be, then I'm betting. NFL, I'm a little bit more lenient. I need to see a 10 cent edge. So I think there's a lot of value just based on how precise you can get with numbers. And by the way, that bet lost that day with Kershaw. I mean, that's going to happen. I lost it, but every game following games 2 through 6, the first inning wager won every game. So got back the losses on that one.
I hesitate to even ask this question, but it never ceases to amaze me how stupid casinos are. But why aren't they doing this? I mean, they obviously can afford the databases. They could hire somebody to be setting better lines.
Well, I said that, they're setting the initial line accurately, but it's the drivers that are moving the markets. And there's a perception with this prop, with the good pitchers, you're going to get a lot of no wagers because they just think it's easy money and it's going to be over in 10 minutes when both starting pitchers mow down the batting orders. So this is what's driving. Initial lines are accurate. Bad money is going in, which is creating opportunities for me. But they will miss the boat. On football Sundays, I want to get on there real fast because they when you're posting 100 props, you're going to miss each game. You can't possibly nail each one accurately, so you will miss. And it is important in those type of plays to get in there early before someone else beats you to the punch.
These databases, how extensive is, say, the NFL database, and how much do they cost?
The NFL database is the most in-depth. You would be amazed about how detailed each and every play is chronicled. Who's on the field? Who did what? I mean, it's just unbelievable. The data that I buy year in and year out, including football, roughly costs about $1,000. The bulk of it, I think football is about $800 a year, which you need to spend if you want this detailed play-by-play information. There's cheaper ones if you have different angles that won't go into in such detail that might cost you $100 a season. Golf, for what I need, $400 a season. So roughly $1,000, $1,500 a season that I purchase.
So it sounds like baseball must be really cheap then if football's $800 and golf is $400.
Yeah, baseball is, the initial large database is 800, but for the NFL, but I think it goes down once you have the database and just need yearly updates. It might be around 250 or 300. So I think it's about 1,000, but baseball is, that may cost you initially much more too, but once you're in there and just need one season update, probably $100-150.
Do you have particular there, or listeners just go ahead and find them by themselves?
Let's see. I'll go ahead and give a plug to Armchair Analysis for the NFL. That's the unbelievable database you can buy. Armchair Analysis. Everything you could possibly want is in that database and is available. I get my golf from tour-tips.com, which is a very good site as well. And I believe another one is kosports.com, where that's KO Sports, where I get my baseball from.
And we'll put links to all those in the show notes.
Sure. Great.
So how much data do you use? Like, I remember when Michael Shackelford was talking about his Super Bowl prop bets. If you're using 20-year-old data, is woefully out of date. The passing is much higher now. Going on, fourth down conversion is much higher now. And so, because the game has changed. So what kind of window of data do you use?
Boy, you're exactly right about that. Especially, I think the NFL is the most evolving, especially the last few years. And Michael Shackelford, the Wizard of Odds, he described the kind of problems he ran into regarding the 3.5 field goals. That has changed dramatically. So you have to understand the trends. And I have a whole chapter in my book about this is where you find the value, is noticing the trends, noticing the fourth down conversions, which are dramatically up from even 3 years ago. This is where you can find value because the lines makers are often going to use those numbers that have been stagnant for 20 years. So things are constantly evolving. I can go back 20 years for a baseball play on the 7.5 total. I don't think that is going to change much, but there are plays that, let's take the special team scores. You could bet that there will be a special team score in the NFL. It would happen 1 out of 3 games. Last few years, now it's 1 out of 4 games. I mean, that's a dramatic movement based on the changing nature. And the reason they did this is one rule change is they moved the kickoff. They don't want to see injuries on kickoff returns anymore. So you're losing all those kickoff return touchdowns that you did have before. They've gone down a fraction of what they once were. So it is important. You can't just use a blanket database and say, I'm going to calculate this, because you will lose. You've got to recognize the trends. And a lot of the plays now for the NFL, I'm only going back 2 or 3 years because that's all I can, because it has changed so much.
All right. We're going to get into your golf plays, which is not talked a whole lot on our shows. And before we do that, we're going to take a brief commercial break. The South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more than anyone else has. In November, the promotion is half price Amazon or Walmart gift cards. Normally, you can redeem 8,334 points for $25 in cash or free play. This month, you earn and redeem the points for a $50 gift card. There's a limit of 12 per person, which is $600 worth. This means for the first $100,000 coin in November, you have a 0.6 slot club instead of a 0.3 slot club. On Thanksgiving Day, there is a hot seat promotion. $100 in free play goes out every 3 minutes between 8 a.m. and midnight. At predicted.org, it's a market where you can place small bets on the occurrence of various political events, mostly but not entirely in the United States. Now, the election is over, but there's still, right now, there's props on recounts. And will any of them take place, and will the votes change? Our listeners receive a one-time offer of a deposit match up to $20 at predictit.org/promo/edge. You must play the money through once and cannot withdraw it for 30 days. Videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. One of the games we sometimes talk about is Ultimate X. Ultimate X is 10 coins per line, and every winning combination you get, you will get a multiplier for the next hand. So the top multiplier is 12x, which usually goes to the full house in games without wild cards, or straight flush in deuces games. The strategy is not the same as a regular game. The Pro Trainer membership on videopoker.com, there is an additional fee for that, gives triple and 5 play Ultimate X every possible hand, gives you the correct play. So you can create your own, you can find out how much the game is worth, and you can get good at it before you invest real money. We're back talking with Logan Fields. Now, you are somebody who, I suppose it's because of a character flaw of you enjoy watching golf on television.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, I don't know, is alcohol involved in this too, or?
Oh, I like it so much I don't even need the alcohol. That's how sick I am.
So, there have been a number of plays that you found and exploited, some of which no longer exist. But give us an idea of, in general, how a sharp bettor could win betting golf.
Okay. Yeah, I've been focusing a lot discussing the other sports about the data. You need this data. You need to look at these spreadsheets. But there is other ways to make money, and specifically on golf. Now, when you see the matchups posted each week, you know, Tiger versus Phil, or by the time you get to them, the sharp bettors have already bet into them, and those lines are exactly where they should be. You're not going to beat those guys. One of the guys I believe you had on the program a couple months ago, Rufus Peabody, I think he's one of the best, and he's massaging these lines based on his bet action, and you're not going to find value. But that doesn't mean that golfing can't be very lucrative. And one thing I focus on is golfer injuries. If you're watching a lot of golf or reading a lot of golf, you're going to pick up on these things. And in football, a line will move based on the health of one player. Like, Brady missed a practice. It's Friday. He's not going to play. The line will move. But Brady's one player out of 53. In golfers, when you have a player complaining about his bad back, he is the whole team. I mean, it doesn't go beyond him. So I think there's enormous, as I've shown in the book, possibilities of when you're paying attention, when you're following the sport closely, that you're going to become privy to some of these opportunities. So focusing on these injuries can be lucrative. A few years ago, I heard on the eve of the British Open, I just stumbled upon an article, this golfer named Chris Wood, and he was on the verge of dropping out. He had a blocked joint in his neck, and he said he was actually in tears the day before the tournament. And to me, that didn't sound like a guy that was ready to play golf. So I bet the farm against them. And this is one, you don't need a database. It might help to have a general idea of where the line will be, but you bet the farm. And in golf, it's important to note that if a guy tees off, then you have action. It's not like tennis where the whole match has to be completed. And sure enough, watching the coverage the next day, this Chris Wood, I couldn't believe it. They updated the scores on the scroll. He was actually on the course. I was shocked because I bet heavily against him. Sure enough, after 12 holes, he did drop off. So that was easy money. And these kind of opportunities are going to come up again. But like I say, you got to be paying attention. How do you pay attention? One idea, aside from reading and watching all you can, is to follow golfers on social media. Most of them are on there now. And I pointed out in the book, if you can stand reading about how great all their lives are by all their posts, then you're going to want to follow them. Personally, I can't stand it, so I don't follow them as much as I should. But this is one angle that you can use because they're very forthcoming about information. People love, I'm sure you guys are aware, to talk about their ailments for whatever reason. So I think there's an opportunity there. Another idea on making money is live markets. And I think that's on all the sports. There's big opportunities in live betting. Even the NFL, the unbeatable NFL, I think there's opportunities there, which I didn't talk a whole lot about in the book, but they are out there. So I think that's I found some real good opportunities on golf and live betting that I did talk about in the book. So I think that's definitely a big opportunity moving forward.
Can you give an example of that for live betting in golf?
Yeah, exactly. I think the lines makers are not as sharp with golf, and they kind of force stuff out there. There's odds on live betting what will be the score of Tiger Woods, say on the 7th hole. You can easily access data that will show you that 90% of the guys are making par on the 7th hole. So even if he's Tiger Woods, he's most likely going to make par on that hole, and the odds don't always reflect that. The NFL, real quick, you have tendencies now because of analytics, coaches are going for it for the 2-point conversion much more than they did in the past. Now, you can recognize those opportunities, and you might have a line for a specific quarter at 7.5. Now, if you're confident that a coach is going to go for it, the over 7.5, because in the old days you needed 2 scores. Now there's opportunities you're only going to need 1 score. So I think that's definitely worth watching. So opportunities in live betting, I think, is the best way moving forward to become a profitable gambler.
You live in Southern California, which isn't that far away from Vegas. Is Vegas an out for your sports betting?
Yes, it definitely is in play. I moved to the West Coast 5 years ago. The main reason is I wanted to be on the Pacific time zone because it just works out perfectly. The games during the week go off at 7, which is 4, so you can come close to working a normal 9 to 5 job. Of course, weekends you need a much earlier start. But another reason is Vegas. I'm a 40-minute flight away very easily. Initially, when I moved here, I'm not a good flyer. I thought I would drive back and forth for my roughly 6 to 8 visits a year. I did that exactly one time and vowed never to do it again. Part of the reason is, I-15 is the most dangerous stretch of highway in the world. So I'm using the odds in my life as well. I think driving's like 65 times more dangerous than flying is what I read. So anyway, I do make trips to Vegas. My outs have been dwindling over the last 20 years, as we've discussed. I'm only playing at 3 or 4 books online now, and Vegas, there's 10 or 11 outs for me here. So in the events that I'm particularly strongest at, I'm going to make the trip. Notably, golf majors, the Masters, British Open, U.S. Open, and of course, January is very busy with football playoffs, and of course, the 1,000 of NFL props that come up for the Super Bowl. So spend practically half of the month in January here in Vegas. So Vegas is a play. It is in play for me.
So you're here right now because it's the Tuesday before the Masters. By the time our listeners hear this, it will all be over. But what are you out there looking for now in terms of the Masters?
We're going to give you a chance to look really stupid here.
I kind of sense that. Okay, I'm going to go out on the limb. Of course, there's always the editing feature. No, I know you guys aren't going to go there if things don't turn out my way. But as I stated, the matchup, it's tough to find value. Maybe I have a better chance here finding some rogue sports books that are putting up numbers that aren't available. So I'm looking closely at matchups. But once again, I'm looking at proposition wagers. I feel very confident in the Masters. Weather is a big factor this year, expected to be this year. They're going to get a lot of rain. And for me, that means a slower course, which is easier scores. You give these golfers a wet golf course and greens that are receptive. I mean, they could tear this place apart. I think the over-under for winning score is 275.5. I'm expecting the wet conditions, and I'm going to play under that 275.5 with reckless abandon. I'm going to hit that hard. That's available at a lot of different sports books. Going to tend to favor the long hitters because it's wet. The ball doesn't roll. They're going to, if you can find matchups with longer guys versus short hitters off the tee, the Zach Johnsons of the world, that's definitely an angle as well. But the main thing is I'm going to play for the course to play easy. And, of course, they always say the guys at the Masters can do whatever they want, but I have a hard time believing that they're going to be able to make this a stern test, for this year's Masters. So that's my angle, and hope it works out.
Is it raining there right now, or are you going to wait a couple of days to make sure that it rains?
Yeah, I'm so confident, and I discussed this briefly in the book as well. I mean, when you're talking 80% chance of rain on Wednesday and Thursday, it's just overwhelming that at some point the course is going to get soaked. There are times where, I'm going to wait it out a couple days. I'm not going to throw money at it when I'm not even sure. But I think when we're this close to it, we're less than 48 hours, and they're calling for it. And I feel very confident it's going to come. And I think it's going to affect the way the course plays dramatically.
You have a section in your book on betting Final Jeopardy where it just happens that we're taping this the week after we found out that Alex Trebek died. So for those of us who've been a big fan of the show, he's been on there for like 35 years and kind of like a father figure to a lot of us. And
Definitely.
it's a sad time. But One of your beliefs is that bet sizing in Final Jeopardy is done wrong frequently. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's done so frequently that I actually get excited when I see someone do it right. It's just unbelievable. These guys are smart as a whip, but these very basic logical calculations that they need to have the best chance to win at the end is totally foreign to them. And you'd be hard pressed to go even 1 week of shows not to find a contestant making an extremely bad mistake. I'll go into it real fast here. When the leader has 10,000 and you have 8,000, let's just say the third place is not a factor. When you have that 8,000, you know the leader is going to bet 6,000 to overtake in case you double your money. I mean, there's very few exceptions. You're always going to cover the second place guy. That being the case, you know the first place guy is going to bet at least $6,001. That's going to leave him with, a dollar short of 4,000. That means your only way of winning is if the first place contestant misses. So with him missing and having 4,000 left and you with 8,000, you can't possibly make an argument that you should bet more than the 4,000. You need to stay ahead of his miss. And it just happens day after day for the last 35 years where that second place contestant will bet 7,999, leaving him $1. It just makes no sense whatsoever. And it never gets better. We're in the age of analytics. And, it would just take a 10-minute conversation like, hey, let's talk about final. I hear you're going to be on the show. And these conversations never happen. They're still making the same boneheaded mistakes that they always have. And it drives me crazy. And I wrote to Ken Jennings in the book, and I described, we had a brief correspondence, and he says it drives him equally as nuts watching this happen.
But the leader could also say, gee, the second place guy is smart. I know that he's only going to bet 4,000, so I only need to bet 2,001. The one benefit you could have is if your opponent has won before, you can look at what they've done in the past and then do it accordingly.
That's true. Right.
So you can say, in the past, when this guy was in the lead, he's going to cover my 8,000 bet and then assume that he's going to use that strategy again.
Yes, exactly. And you'll find that, 98% of the time they are going to cover. You don't want to bet, not enough to cover the second place guy who may bet everything. So they're all, practically always. There's occasionally you see a nervous Nelly contestant that, maybe they don't feel comfortable in a particular category. That can sway into things. But for the most part, I think math has got to be your guiding principle without regard to the categories and how comfortable you feel. I think it all comes down to the math. Now, things could eventually sway in the other direction where all of a sudden everyone's doing game theory, and that would really convolute things. But, I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, and since a relatively small percentage of our listeners are going to be on Jeopardy, we can probably move on.
Okay.
If someone in our audience wishes to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
I'll be happy to correspond with anyone. My email address is loganfields49@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter now @loganfields49. So don't ask me the significance of 49. I guess there was just 48 other Logan Fields that beat me to the punch. So that's where I am. loganfields49@gmail.com.
You actually tried Logan Fields, and then Logan Fields 1, and then Logan Fields 2, and then Logan Fields 3, and you stopped at 49?
I think I stopped at 49, yeah. Finally got a hit then.
But you had 48 misses first.
I mean, I may have.
Count me a skeptic.
I probably got the message after 12 or 13 and then just, entered some whatever came into my head. So whatever. My wife suggested, you should have took Logan Fields 2020 because of the book, but that's every 2020 was gone. So
very good. We wish you success on the book, and Richard and I know from experience that you're going to make 25 cents an hour on this book.
That's why I said in the book that I know it's tough in the book business, but, I would take minimum wage with all the hours that I put into it. That would be a good thing. And so clearly there's no incentive for me to make anything up. It's not a money making, it's not going to change my life no matter how many it sells. Because the target market is so small. Of course, I'm hoping it goes viral and goes crazy. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we wish you luck.
Thank you.
Now, at the end of our show, we have a recommend section. Richard, do you have anything for our audience today?
Yeah, I'm currently watching a show on Netflix called Borgen. It is basically kind of like The West Wing set in Denmark. And I think they have 3 seasons. I'm in the 2nd season. I've been enjoying it. So, yeah, that's my recommendation for this week.
Very good. And Logan, before the show, you said you had something you wanted to share with our audience.
I do. I went to the taping of Jeopardy after Alex, when he announced that he did have cancer. I said, I'm going to go. And last November, I went down. You can get tickets. They're free, and saw 3 episodes, and then they escort you out, and then the second shift comes in. They take a break for lunch and all that. So Alex, during the taping, during commercials, he will come out to the audience and ask the audience, they can ask him anything he wants, and he politely fielded them all. I mean, just the day I was there, he probably took 50 questions. One of the questions asked was, what's your favorite book? And without hesitation, he said Razor's Edge by Somerset Maugham. And it kind of makes sense. The book is about a man's search for the meaning of life. And that's where Alex was at the time. And he was a philosophy major as well. So I went home and read the book, enjoyed it immensely. And as a tribute to Alex, that is my recommendation, Razor's Edge, Somerset Maugham.
One of my favorite books is also by Somerset Maugham, Moon and Sixpence, which is kind of a fictionalized version of the life of Gauguin. So I enjoyed Razor's Edge as well. Somerset Maugham, great writer.
Yeah, great. Mm-hmm.
And I actually attended some tapings of Jeopardy back when I was a contestant on there, and a couple times before to get kind of a real life feel to it. It's an interesting process. Sitting in the audience, they tell you don't shout out the answer, and it is sometimes it's hard because the contestants are not allowed to hit the button before Trebek starts the first part of the last syllable of the clue. And so that can give you 3 or 4 or 5 seconds in the audience to come up with the answer before they're even allowed to say it. So
exactly.
So frequently you know the answer if you're any good at all, and you just want to say Thomas Jefferson, and I'm actually surprised that the audience yelling out doesn't happen more than it does. That would be because the urge was overwhelming.
I should have asked that question. I was even thinking about that day. Like, what happens during Final Jeopardy when someone does? Then they have 30 seconds. So, it had to have happened at some point. But I guess I'll never be able to get that opportunity now. But, yeah, interesting.
Well, I'm not sure the show is going to go off the air. Certainly, Alex Trebek will no longer be the host. But I suspect they will try it with another MC to see if it can build a following. Trebek wasn't the first. Art Fleming was before he was. So the show may well go on. It's a popular show.
I'm going to vote for Ken Jennings to be the successor. So in case my bold master predictions don't weigh in, maybe I'll be right about this one. But that's just a shot in the dark.
I heard an interview with him recently, before Trebek died, actually, and they asked him about that, and he said he had no desire to do it.
Okay. So I guess time will tell. But yeah, that makes him a long shot.
James Holzhauer would be interested. James has a very quick wit, and he's and this weird wry smile.
Yeah, he does. He does.
That and you know, he has enough money and enough outs that he can do what he wants. I wonder if that being the host would scratch his itch. I suspect he'll be at least approached. Who knows? So thank you, Logan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.